Hi, this is Kunal from Loop 91. Today we are talking about Kanban Board next experience component that we will see how can we use in UI Builder, how to configure it, and how to work with events on this component. This video has been really hard for me because this is the third time starting recording, and it is not because I don't know how this component works. It is because I know how this component works and how fragile the configuration on this component is. This would be an example why so many people clearly hate UI Builder and the components and the whole ecosystem around it. But let's not get distracted and we will start. I'll clarify what I wish to aim during this video. So we would be creating a Kanban board and we'll create a card on it, and the card would have these things. First would be short description that will be at the top. Then these will be dots which are called labels in this component. Then would be description, and then we will add three label info text, SLA, due date, and checklist. Then we would make sure that we can move cards from one lane to another, and at the end we will add these buttons which will allow you to open a new model window and create new records on the table where we get these cards from. So let's get started. To start, I have a new page on the screen. It's empty and there is no component on it. Before we start adding components, we will go to the documentation of ServiceNow and look as to what this component is and what are the anatomical units of it. So when you look at a Kanban board, the first thing we look is there's a vertical lane. For example, on your screen, what you see is backlog, and then with each lane there would be a card. Now there could be multiple lanes. There could also be multiple swim lanes. We would not be covering that in today's videos, but that will give you a third dimension for a card. For example, on backlog and to do could be a state on an incident, and the swim lanes could be priority. Today we would be covering lanes, vertical lanes, and cards on this lane. So let's get started. First thing that we do is we will add a Kanban board onto the canvas. It will create vertical lanes for you. It will not create any cards for you. So first thing we'll look at is creation of vertical lanes. Now here you have option to edit and it opens in form, but it hardly helps. The best way to look at it is go to the JSON, format it, and then have a look at it. Let's look at what each object, because there's an array of object, what each object contains, right? So the ID would be your lane ID, and this is important because when you will create cards, you would assign to a lane, and this will be the ID that you will assign to it. Title and name are what you see on the screen. Then there are some styles. These styles are what goes inside. For example, sn-lane is the lane, and lane footer container is what comes at the end of the lane. Then you come to options, and these are very important. You decide which kind of board it is, and there are few other options which to me don't make much sense, but they are there. For example, they want us to define how many lanes are there, but this is within a lane object, which makes little sense. Why would I declare how many lanes are there within an individual lane? But this is what ServiceNow needs, and this is what we will be creating for it. And since this is something that we need to get from database, I have already created a data broker for this. Let me quickly jump to that. Right, so this is get priority value, and I should have started what I want to show. So what I want to show is incidents, and for vertical lanes I've decided that I want to classify them per their priority. So what you see on the screen is incident table grouped by priority. So I would see 4 or 5 lanes: critical, high, moderate, low, and planning. And critical would see few cards, high would see few other cards, then moderate and low and planning. Each would have few cards, and we plan to allow the user to change priority by just dragging the card from one lane to another lane. So I have already created this script. I will try and gather all the script during this demo and put it on a GitHub page so that you can use that. So what we're essentially doing is that we are going to assess choice table, and we are looking at the task table and the element name that starts with priority. We are gathering all the values, and the object that we are creating has 3 keys: sysID, label, and value. And this is something that I already added as a data resource. So if I click on it, you would see the output has 5 objects, and each object has critical, that is the label, sysID of this sys choice, and the value of this particular choice. So let's now convert this into a client state parameter. For this demo, I have created 2 client state parameters. One is lanesData, another is cardsData. Both are JSON type. And these client state parameter will hold the data for creation of lanes and the cards. And how do I populate that is through an event on the data resource. For example, on get priority value, on succeed, I have set a client script that will take this data and convert it into the object that Kanban board expects. So I have written the script. Let me show it to you guys. Let me zoom in so that it's easy to see. And let's do this. Let's remove this. This is not something we need. Correct. So we have the data that we saw for priority. We are mapping that is converting into a new array, and we return with ID, that is lane underscore choice dot value. Title is choice dot label. Name is also choice dot label. The style we have copied as verbatim. We haven't changed anything on it. We have also not changed anything on the options. You would also notice that I have not changed the lane count or the highest lane order because they apparently have no effect on the final output. So this script runs, and this sets the data onto your client state parameter once this is done. So we will now go and map this using data, client state, and lanes data. Apply, and you can already see it that now the lanes have changed to critical, high, moderate, low, and planning. We will save this and try and open this into a new tab. And we already see that now we have 5 lanes here. Let's go back and now work to add new cards. Let's get started on creation of cards. So for that, we will go to cards basic configuration, and you would see it requires cards template and it requires cards data. This is the part where people who don't have access to any documentation, because there is no documentation as such, will fail. Because this, if we click on edit, and as it happens whenever you actually try to use a ServiceNow provided component, this normally suffices what is required for the component to work. But in this particular case, if you were to put in these 4 values, you wouldn't see no card. Why? I don't know. But there are in fact 7 minimum required properties for a card to appear. So what we will do is, first we need to put in the template. And again, this is not available on any documentation. There is a blog that I had to use initially, and that does mention this, but I found a different way of finding more things, but I'll come to that at the end of the video. So first, let's populate the value for card templates. And for second part, I have written a script similar to what I did for lanes. So what we are doing is we are getting all the incidents using this data resource, and we are getting active, short description, priority, and number. And when this data is pulled, we are running a client script that is SetCards set cards data, and let's look at the script now. Similar to what we did for lanes, we just take the array of objects, run a map on it, and for each incident we are returning ID, that would be its sys ID. Title would be the short description. Order, I have kept it at 0. You could increment it by the number of cards there are in a lane, but for this demo we have just kept it 0. So order is what decides whether the card is at the top of the lane or the bottom of the lane. Lane ID is really important because this decides which lane this card goes to, and that is lane underscore. Similarly, the way we did it for lanes, we are using the same format, and that is lane underscore priority dot value. Again, it has to have this options, but I have not modified anything in it. I have just copied verbatim from an example. Attachment for some reason has to be there despite the fact you want to show attachment or not, which is okay. And then, so if you remember, we already put in the title, but that title does nothing. What you need to do is you need to put a record object, and on it short description that will become the title of the card, and description that will become the description, the text just below the title. Then if you remember, we had these red dots. These are called label for some reason, and they are decided this way. So you decide whether this is active or not. You decide whether it will be red or any other color. Let's make it yellow for this example. And then this would be your tooltip. And third part would be the checklist. And checklist is simply an items, an array of object, whether it is complete or not. And it will calculate how many are complete and give you an output saying 2 out of 3 checklists are complete. And then comes SLA, and within SLA you just provide the percentage that has been covered for this particular incident or task or whichever record you are carrying. And then last is due date display value, and this is something which I've used in multiple places. For example, due date could be anything. Ideally you should provide a date, but then you could use a random string. For example, I used due date display value in this screenshot, but for the example we'll continue to use an actual date, but let's convert it into UK format. So it will be 31/12/2023. That's it. And now we will connect this client script or the client parameter to our cards data. Oh no, we need to connect it to the data resource here. Client state, cards data, apply. And we have what we expected from it. We have the title at the top, then a yellow dot, then the description. SLA, due date and checklist are hard coded, so it will be same for each and every card. Let's save it and reload our preview page so that we know it's working. Once you do this, you will see that you can see the cards, and you can also move cards from one lane to another. But since we haven't configured an event for it, it will just go back. So for example, this, if I move it at the top, it will just come back here. So next step, we will now configure this event so that card, when you move to a different lane, lives there. To facilitate moving of cards between lanes, we would need a client script, and the client script will modify our client state parameters, cards data. So if you remember, cards data has a property called lane ID, and this is where we would do all the changes. I've already written down this script here. Let me expand it. Whenever we have this trigger, this event is triggered, you get a payload containing 4 variables: ID, to lane, from position, and to position. ID is your card ID. It would be the sys ID of the incident. To lane is the lane where you have moved the card to now. From position is position from top within a lane, and to position is again position from the top but in the target lane. Now, since we already have the script, we will connect this to our Kanban event. So let's go and card moved, and we'll connect it to a client script. We'll save this and quickly go and see whether this works. Right, I will move it to the moderate and it stays there. But one thing we have not done is that store the new priority onto the incident record. And for that, we need to connect this to our data resource. I have created this data resource by the name update card. Remember, in ServiceNow UI Builder, whenever you create an update record, it does not do anything by itself. You need to trigger it. And for that, I have written a script that we will add to the bottom of this. Let me paste it. What it does is gets the priority from the to lane and then computes the priority that we need to set by creating by generating a matrix. For example, if you wanted priority 1, the impact and urgency has to be 1, and for priority 2, impact 1, urgency 2. And then we call this data resource by setting template fields with impact and urgency, and we add a work note saying change by moving cards. So let's apply this, save it, and go to our page, reload the page. Now, if I were to move this to this moderate and refresh the page, I will see that this has now 3 and can't log into my SAP is part of moderate lane. Up till now, what we have covered is how would we create new lanes, how would create new cards, and how do we format data inside the card, labels, short description, and other values. How we move it between lanes, that we have covered. For the last step, what I want to show you is how to display this add card. And once we have this displayed, we will modify the text to say new incident rather than new card. So for that, we will jump to our UI builder, and what we need to do is go to Kanban configuration and go to lane footer configuration. And this is again something which is undocumented. I did find this on the blog by ServiceNow. So let's do that, vtb-lane footer. And the moment you set this property, you would see the new cards appear automatically. Now that is out of the box. If I wanted to modify this, let's save it and see how it looks, and then we'll modify the text on it. Now we have a card. There is no event on it. We will come to that after this. So to modify this, what we need to do is we will go to our SetLanesData script and add a new option to options, and that would be add card footer name, new artifact. Let's make it new incident. Save it and let's refresh the page. And you see new incident. Now to connect it to an event, one of the problems that this component has had is that not all events are listed here. And that is why this blog has provided very kindly that these are the events that are triggered from it. But if you go through this blog, you will realize that even then this is not a straightforward process. What you need to do is you need to create these handled event on body and then trigger it through those. But they provided these properties and some related scripts for only 2 events. One is confirmation modal selected. This is trigger when you click on a card, and VTB swim lane action performed. This is when you move the lane, but nothing for anything else on this list. And I searched and I searched and I searched. I couldn't find it anywhere. Luckily, I found a way, and this is something that will happen if you have some years in ServiceNow. So let's go and I'll show you how I did that. For this part, I'll assume that you have gone through this blog and understand how you can add custom events to components. The process is that you add handled event to body, then add event handling on that event, and then modify your component with declarative action map field. These are declarative action mapping for example, this is for confirmation model selected, which corresponds to when you click on a card, and VTB swim lane action performed is when you move the lane from one place to another. Now, this block kindly provides the list of events that are possible on this component, but what they don't provide is this action mapping string. And since they don't, and there is no documentation for this, the only way to find out is to find out if someone has used it, if you have access to such an application, and then copy it from there. But I didn't have that. So let's do something. We will try to find something out, right? So on this object, assignment ID is a sys ID. So what we will do is we will go and find out on which table does this record exist, right? So we'll go to an incident and search for this. It opens declarative action assignment table. Let's copy the action label and open the list view. Search for this component again, this assignment again, and the action model is board. So we will show matching that and remove the label filter. Now you see there are 31 action assignment available for this particular component. And one of those which we need is add card clicked. Now, if you go back to the string, we have the sys-ID, we have the name of the event. What we don't have is action payload. And this record doesn't have that anywhere. For example, if I were to open this, it doesn't have any payload definition here. But what it does have is on how many pages and which pages is this event being used. And one of them is Visual Board demo page. If I were to open this, you will find that this was shipped to almost all instances where you have UI builder, and nobody tells you about it. There is no documentation which says you can go and open this page to look for this. I try to open this page and the workspace associated on my instance, it just says 404. If I try to edit this, it will show us that this application is private and you cannot edit anything. But one thing that they cannot stop you to do is to open the XML. So that is what we'll do. We'll open the XML. And then we'll find the name of the event. The name of the event that we need is add card click. Let me quickly find that. So this is the name of the event that we need. If I find that, and here it is. And if you look at the JSON that is associated with this and paste that into a JSON formatter, this is what you get. Assignment ID, name of the event, and most importantly, the payload. And if you go to this page again, you will find that that is not the only thing you will find. It also has card clicked. It also has create lane. It also has swim lane expand all, free from card edit. There are plethora of events that are here. And since this is a demo page, I'm assuming they have tried to map each and every event available to a script. And this is where I found all the details. I will try and compile this into a document and put it on GitHub and link that into a description. But for now, we will use this to map our add card to a new model. Let's jump to UI Builder and create that handle event. First, we'll go to the body events and add a handle event. The label we'll copy as it is, that is VTB action card clicked. Event remains name. Event name is just copied from here, but now we need to provide the name of the payload. And if you see, the payload is simply card, so we will put that here, card, and we will mark this as JSON and add. That is it. We will create a new client script, and this is my favorite client script, that is dump payload. And on this, what we do is console.log, and we say hola mundo, and then we dump all the values in API and event. Let's map this to our VTB add card clicked and VTB add card clicked, client script, dump payload, continue, add. Now that being done, now we need to go and modify our component. For that, we'll click on the component, go to the configuration, and modify the declarative action map. Taking a hint from how this was done, we will do exactly that, which is it has to be an object with each event name will represent an object, and the object would be that we have here. So let's do this, copy this and go here. This will be the event name, and then would be this. Let's format this and copy the event name from here and paste it here. So that is your event mapping. That being done, now we would configure declarative action mapping event mapping, and this is, we will call new incident, use this, and the value of the card would be oh no, we need to use that one, yeah, add payload dot card. That's it. Apply, save, and done. Save, and let's go to our output page, refresh it, and since we were logging it to the console, once the page loads, we will open the dev controls and go to the console. I'll hide the warnings because they take up too much space, and click on new incident, and you see we have it. Hola Mundo, that is the event that we triggered. The first one is API, and the second one is your event. And within your event, you will find the payload, the card, the lane ID for some reason is undefined. I have no idea why that is, but you do get the position that is bottom. So what I want to do is, once a user clicks on it, I want them to see a model window where they can create a new incident. So let's go here, create a new model, custom, and on this we will add header, let me pause my video and configure this, and I will restart after that. For our body, we will add simply a form controller, and we will let ServiceNow configure most of the things for us. Configure manually, done, and we will choose the table as incident. There is the incident table. It doesn't for some reason allow -1 to be set as a value. So what we will need to do is we will create a new client state parameter, new incident sys id, and we will mark as -1. Go back to our form controller and attach that value from our client state parameters. This one, done, apply, close, and that should show up here. And we will add the action buttons in the footer, and that will be action bar, and we will simply connect that to our form controller. Let me see if it is correctly associated with, yeah, that is correct. And I think that is done for the overlay model. Now we just need to connect it to our click. So we'll go back to the body, and on add card click, we will simply connect this to overlays, open, and we will choose our model, that is custom one, add, save, and go and reload that page and pray to our UI builder gods that this works. And you have it. Just fill out the details and click on save. That should create your new incident. I would like to conclude this video by saying that after making this video, I understand why people hate UI Builder. The lack of documentation is one thing, but sheer idiocy of creating and card property which does not have the minimum required parameters for card to work, that is not understandable. That is not issue of documentation. That is pure negligence on part of the developers. You don't have click on a card event. Why would that be custom? Why would there be a button out of box and there not be an event to associate it with? Why do you have 31 action assignments and only 4 or 5 events available out of the box? How do you expect anyone to not go through hell before they can make this work? I understand ServiceNow had bad time with AngularJS being deprecated by Google, so they decided to develop their own ecosystem. But when you do that, you need to commit resources to it and commit to making it work. Workspace is not just for ServiceNow applications. ServiceNow has been pushing for every developer to use this, but at the same time making it very, very hard for us to develop on it. I hope someone from ServiceNow who actually works for UI Builder looks at this and realize that how bad the situation is. If someone who has experience of 5-6 years and they still cannot make this work, that is not developers' problem. That is ServiceNow lacuna. Anyways, thanks for watching. If you like our content, please subscribe. And if you really, really like it, share it with others.